Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. So wherever you're joining us in the world, I know this is probably a more of a Europe-centric or maybe even Middle East-centric time. So, but it may be evening for some people, maybe in APAC or wherever you are. So, welcome. So we are here with HYCU and Dell. We're going to talk about Nutanix and data protection and data efficiency and all those wonderful things you'd expect from our topic. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. This will be recorded. So you will receive a copy of the recording. So if you do have to dip out for a few minutes, take a phone call or whatever, you won't miss anything. It will be on demand as well on the HYCU website, so you'll be able to then pass it on to your colleagues or partners or customers or whoever else you want to pass it on to take a listen. Because yes, it will be that engaging. You want to share it with everybody that you know. Um, Please make it interactive. So there should be a Q&A function available to everybody. So if you want to ask a question, don't wait till the end. Please just dump it in the Q&A. We'll be monitoring it as we go. To myself and Nick will be able to answer them as we go. So please don't be shy. It makes it much easier for us to, if we talk about things that you guys want to hear about rather than just what's on our slides solely. So it'd be great if you do. But we're gonna get started in just a moment. I can still see a few people trickling in to the room, probably grabbing their coffees or their lunch or whatever it is, whatever time it is for them. So I'll just give it a few more moments, and then we'll get started. Right, I think it's slightly slowed down. I can still see some people, but we'll get started. Be conscious of people's time, and they can always catch up on the last few bit, like the first few slides anyway. So welcome to today's webinar. So maximizing data management, security, and storage efficiency with HYCU and Dell. And we're going to be talking mainly about Nutanix today, but we are going to be covering other workloads as well. So some SaaS and some cloud workloads towards the end of the presentation. So, keep with us for that towards the end of the presentation as well. So my name is Chris Rogers. So I'm a senior product marketing manager here at HYCU. I predominantly look after Nutanix, Dell, VMware, kind of all of our hybrid cloud solutions, the on-premise and those IaaS worlds. So that's why I'm talking today. And then I'm pleased to be joined by Nick from Dell. So Nick, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. My name is Nick. I'm from Dell, working as a pre-sales system engineer. I'm actually covering the data protection portfolio of Dell, and then within the Benelux area. So I'm covering all these customers there. Working with Dell for almost 20 years, so
Wow.
I have a huge background there. So yeah, that's my intro. Thanks, Chris.
Amazing. So yeah, if you have any questions for Nick, there shouldn't be anything he can't answer, right? On Dell data domain and anything else we're going to
Yeah,
cover
yeah.
today. 20 years should be enough. So see if you can put your hardest question to him. So we're going to talk about HYCU. So HYCU is the #1 data protection platform for Nutanix. It's called HYCU R Cloud or Resiliency Cloud, but R Cloud for short. So what does it mean? What do we mean by #1 data protection? Well, number of customers, number of workloads we protect, etc. We are the #1 choice for customers who are protecting Nutanix workloads. And what does that look like? So we have very, very deep integration with Nutanix. We have Nutanix validated designs and blueprints. We have a vast array of workloads we cover. When most people think about Nutanix, they're going to be thinking about AHV, just virtualization. But actually, Nutanix has a vast array of different workloads and offerings that obviously data is a core part of, that a lot of other vendors won't support. So things like Nutanix Kubernetes platform or Nutanix database services or Nutanix files and Nutanix objects. But all those services run on top of the Nutanix platform. But typically people are going to be talking about just virtual machines, whereas HYCU can protect the whole estate. Pretty much if you've got data running inside of your Nutanix cluster, no matter what service it's running, HYCU will be able to protect that. And then flipping back to the left-hand side of the screen here, we're built on military-grade security. So we'll be covering this in a little more detail in some slides later on, so I won't spoil the party for everybody. Then on top of that, we have one of the, or if not the highest net promoter score in the data protection business. So it's incredibly hard to get into the 90s, especially as a backup vendor, which, people always have a bit of beef with backup vendors in general, things go wrong and things. But so we have an NPS score of 91, which is incredibly hard to achieve in any world, and that pretty much aligns to Nutanix as well. Nutanix have a great reputation of customer service and customer satisfaction. They're in the 90s as well, so we align with that as well. And I want to just give you a sample of some of the customers that we have here at HYCU and Dell for Nutanix workloads. So you can see like Gulf there, Orlando Manic, Duke Health, some big names here, American Express, Bain Capital, Meditech. You can see loads of massive companies all across the globe in different verticals. So we're not verticalized. We're not just in Europe or just in America. We cover the whole globe. And you see that I've left one out in the middle, and this is probably the most important customer that we have at HYCU and Dell for Nutanix workloads, because that is actually Nutanix themselves. So Nutanix themselves actually use HYCU, are a paying customer for HYCU. They back up all their workloads using our software. So you can kind of take that for as you will, as they've done their market research on what they think is the best Nutanix backup platform, and they've chosen HYCU continuously for the last 8 years, I believe it is. So Nutanix is a bit of a journey, right? We've seen a big shift in the hypervisor landscape in the last 2 to 3 years, obviously because of the Broadcom changes. I think that kind of accelerated decisions people were making, if that makes sense. VMware was a big part of most people's organizations for the last 15 years. And the digital transformation, the modernization, all those plays and all those kind of buzzwords we've been hearing for a lot of time. I think this really kickstarted those conversations, say, right, what are we going to do about this? And most people have actually flipped and gone, okay, I do still need a hypervisor in my environment. I may be exploring some SaaS and some cloud as well, but I do still need a core hypervisor in my environment and a core on-premise data solution, or a cloud hybrid cloud solution. And for most people, the logical journey was looking at Nutanix, right? So depending where you are on your Nutanix journey, you might be already moved across. You might have been with Nutanix for 10 years already. You might be very new or even still looking at or evaluating Nutanix. The key thing here is, as I said before, Nutanix isn't just virtual machines. We've got all these different areas that you can store data in, files, objects, NC2, which is their kind of hybrid cloud in AWS and Azure offering. I think announced Google Cloud quite recently as well. You've got metro sites, robo sites, volume groups, which are kind of like LUNs, if you will, on a on a typical storage array. All these different components make up the Nutanix platform. The one thing is key though, is when you do move, or if you have moved to Nutanix, is that when you look at data protection, your organization cannot afford retrofitted data protection. So what we typically see is people will make a big change, so they're moving hypervisors or investing in Nutanix and putting that in, learning that, and then they come quickly to realize that their traditional data protection solutions that were built for other platforms, so built for VMware or built for Windows, built for Linux, whatever it might have been, are now have been retrofitted, so patched and kind of twisted and mangled to fit the Nutanix way of working, because the way that they do data storage is vastly different to how most of the industry do it, right? They have their HCI. I know recently they've just announced that PowerFlex is coming on as their external storage as well. But typically the way they store and manage their data is different. So we need to understand how data protection needs to evolve into that ecosystem, because it will harm production if we don't protect the data in the right way. If we do it the way that VMware did it, it's not going to be the most efficient or the best way to do it for how Nutanix store their data. So typically what you'll see is then slow to deploy, slow to scale, hard or not even being able to recover. That also requires an army to manage, because they've just bolted things on. They've just added patches or external solutions or another component or another piece of the puzzle, which then you have to kind of fit into a puzzle that was already relatively complete for VMware. You've got to take it apart again and try and fit this extra piece in, which doesn't really fit. Nick, does that resonate with you and your customers, what you see kind of in Europe in your customer base?
Yeah, absolutely. We really saw a shift. You mentioned the Broadcom thing, right? I mean yeah, but it's really a thing, and you could see that the Dell Nutanix partnership, for example, really made a turn for the good, right? So that's where we really noticed customers were looking for different hypervisor, different things, and especially looking for Nutanix. Yeah. So yeah, that made sense. Yeah.
Perfect, brilliant. So let me come on to purpose-built data protection for your Nutanix data estate. As I mentioned, this isn't just AHV, this is across the board as well. So no matter where you're storing that data, HYCU and Dell are going to have you covered with that. So let's briefly look at some of the use cases that HYCU and Dell cover for Nutanix data workloads. So the first piece I want to kind of go with is application discovery. So the way that we do application discovery is unique in the marketplace. It's actually patented by HYCU. So we have agentless discovery of applications sitting on virtual machines inside of Nutanix. So, you know, imagine a massive, I'm going to call it Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, whatever, whatever else you want to do. This massive organization, they've got, potentially hundreds of thousands of virtual machines running. They've got business units that are probably bigger than some organizations on their own working. They're spinning up workloads, at a rapid pace, moving them, changing them, all these types of things. It's going to be incredibly difficult for the backup admin or the sysadmin for Nutanix or the data protection team to understand what is sitting on those workloads, right? Okay, yesterday this was a database, this same VM is now running this, it's running this, or this VM's popped up, I have no idea what it's running. So essentially, HYCU can automatically discover what's running on those workloads. So if it's SQL, Oracle, Exchange, Active Directory, those types of things, we're going to pull that into HYCU. Then you can see it and then protect it to the right level. Exchange and SQL need protecting differently from an application server, for instance. So you have that visibility in HYCU automatically without deploying any agents on your virtual machines. The second piece is backup and recovery. This is the core of obviously what we're talking about with data protection. Backing up without impact to virtual machines. So everything we do at HYCU is always agentless, without proxies, and API native. So we actually hook into the native APIs underlying on the Nutanix platform, and that's how we build everything. With deep integration with Nutanix, we actually co-develop with Nutanix engineers to make sure we're doing it the way that they want us to do it, not the way we think we should be tapping that data. And then we do obviously do disaster recovery. So not just between Nutanix clusters. So if you are potentially having a multi-hypervisor strategy or a multi-cloud strategy, you can also adopt that as well, because we can do multi-hypervisor or cross-hypervisor recovery, and also spinning up and spinning back from the cloud as well. So if you wanted to have that multiple options, you can do that as well. Cyber resilience, a key topic for most people, and something we're going to be covering in a little bit more detail. But just from a brief overview, HYCU and Dell probably have one of the tightest integrations in terms of cyber resilience, with Dell Cyber Vault and their data domain product being one of the securest in the market, if not the most secure place you can store data in the marketplace. And then HYCU has recently introduced R-Shield, which I don't have time to go through in this webinar because it's a whole webinar in itself, but essentially weaving cyber resilience through the whole fabric of what HYCU does. So from anomaly detection to malware scanning through to immutability, through to protecting the workloads, data validation, RTO assurance. All these things make up this cyber resilience story. It's not just about immutability. It's not just about validation. It's not just about testing. It's about all these things packaged up and being easy and accessible without adding additional SKUs, additional licensing, and additional people to the team to be able to introduce those things. We've discovered mobility and migrations already. We've discussed the ability to move workloads to from between any hypervisor that we support and public cloud as well. Long-term retention, so that could go into, for a Dell ECS, for instance, you could archive off into a Dell ECS, you can archive off into cloud, wherever you want to do that. Security and compliance, we give you ready-made compliance reports out of the box to say, yep, your virtual machines are not only backed up, but can be recovered in the time frame that you told us, which is unique to HYCU as well. And also unique integration for data protection at the edge. So for those robo sites or those those edge processing sites, we actually have unique integration with Nutanix's replication technology, which means we can back up the data using their replication technology. So you don't have to replicate data or move data twice. So if we look into why we are the leader, I'm going to kind of summarize it. So we have the broadest Nutanix coverage across any data protection vendor in the world for Nutanix workloads. We were purpose built for Nutanix, so they were in our DNA. They were the first workload we ever supported. That was the market we went after when we built HYCU. HYCU was built for Nutanix. Obviously, we've expanded and increased our approach, and we now support over 86 different workloads across, hybrid cloud, public cloud, and even SaaS workloads now as well, and even modern AI workloads, but also incredibly secure as well. So we're going to go into security in a bit more detail as well. But we do have this unique relationship with Nutanix. So we pioneered data protection for Nutanix. As I said, we were the first data protection vendor to go there, the first data protection to kind of build with them. We protect everything that's in that environment today. And also you can make sure that we are aligned. You know that you're going to be aligned with Nutanix's roadmaps. Wherever they go in the future, HYCU and Dell are going to follow behind as well. Make sure that any data that gets landed on that platform is protected. And then we run into a very, very high level architecture. So Nick, do you want to take us through this kind of rough architecture as to kind of what are different mean? What do the different pieces mean? What do the arrows suggest? And what does immutability mean? What does dedupe mean? And kind of how does it all fit together?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so this is a high level diagram, and as you can see on the left hand, you can see your Nutanix workloads, your Nutanix infrastructure sitting on top of what you can see here in the picture is on Dell infrastructure as well. And the thing that I want to highlight here is the Dell PowerProtect DD, also called Data Domain. For some of the people that know Data Domain, it was being Dell branded as PowerProtect DD. That is the actual appliance that we're going to talk about here. So you can see the workload shifting from left to right to the PowerProtect DD data domain. PowerProtect DD is the purpose-built backup appliance for Dell that is being used to store the backups. It is a purpose-built backup appliance, like HYCU is purposely made for Nutanix. Data domain is purposely built for receiving backups. That's what it's been doing, and that's what it's been doing for years. With this design, we have a lot of security features as well. Call it immutability integration, for example. We have a feature called retention lock. Retention lock is the immutability feature inside the data domain, which can be switched on by HYCU to get the software lock on HYCU and the hardware lock on the PowerProtect DD. So that makes sure that your data does not get or cannot get changed, deleted, or anything like that. So HYCU has made the integration possible with DD Boost. DD Boost is the integration where we have the source-based deduplication part from the Nutanix platform. When you write the data to the data domain, it gets deduplicated at the source, right? So you would have the efficiency from the beginning. So you would not send a lot of data across the network when you send it to data domain. So that makes it efficient. Also, it is encrypted in flight by default when using a protocol like DD Boost. So that are all security features that that are highly important when you protect your most valuable data to a data domain. When your data domain is stored on, when your data is stored on the data domain, you have the possibility to replicate that as well to another data domain, or maybe to a data domain in the cloud, which is a data domain virtual edition. So you can run that in the cloud. You can also run it on premise, but yeah, most of the customers that we handle have the data domain virtual edition sitting in the cloud. And we will be touching on that as well later, right, Chris?
Absolutely, of course we will. Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So to finish up this slide, we can see a small cyber vault there. It's relatively a small icon, but we have a lot of customers we deal with that are interested in a cyber vault, and what that means actually is to get like a golden copy of your production data that sits on the data domain, to have like an air gap, a directly connected air gap from that system to a so-called cyber vault. So that's where we ingest the copies to be offline and to be sit there for when you need it in case of a ransomware attack, for example.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for running through that. So, yeah, so the things I really got from that was, the DD Boost integration. That's a key piece. It's not just it's not just we're taking some storage from Dell and HYCU can write to it. It's actually a really deep integration at the software layer using a proprietary protocol from Dell, which makes it super efficient, super easy. So it's, we haven't just we'll just take we'll take some data and we'll put it on some Dell storage. It's much deeper than that. And actually coming really, really soon in the next few weeks, we'll actually have things like managed replication from inside HYCU of that data domain and all these types of things. So it's not just a collaboration; it's a real deep level integration between the two products. So we're going to drive into simplicity and efficiency which is, one of the biggest things when it comes to backup, right? People don't want to be spending hours and hours managing backups and figuring out how to do it and all those types of things. We want to make things simple. And also we want to store the backups for as cheap as possible, right? That's the idea behind it. The less it can cost us to store backups, the more budget we potentially have on production, right? Where our money is typically made. So if you look at a legacy data protection solution, right, this is our Nutanix cluster, right? We can run HV or ESX with files and objects on top of it, right? But essentially you can see here at the top, we've got some typical components that other vendors are going to be using to deploy backup onto their systems, right? So we've got backup servers. We're going to then have proxy servers. Oh, we might need more proxy servers for a bit of scale. We're then going to need some reporting. So we need to have an additional VM for reporting. Then we need some mount servers to be able to recover some data. And then we're going to need a central backup manager to manage all of this. And then we're going to need some cloud gateways because we want to push some data into the cloud potentially. Oh, and then on all these VMs, we're potentially going to need agents to deploy as well. So suddenly when you look at the amount of VMs and the amount of resources we've had to take away just to run backups, it becomes incredibly inefficient to do it in the legacy way. So we have to oversize our Nutanix cluster, oversize our VMs because our backups are taking away resources from production data, right? It becomes incredibly inefficient. So it becomes very complex to design, deploy, and manage. Right, we've got 15 different components here to try and maintain, all potentially on different operating systems, all potentially deployed in a different way, different patching schedules, different release schedules for software, etc. So it becomes difficult to manage with two things, let alone 15 different components. As I mentioned before, it siphons those production resources away from valuable virtual machines, right? Your production virtual machines is the reason you bought your production platform to run those VMs or run those workloads, run those files, not to run backups, right? So we want to be using the minimal amount of resources possible. It becomes difficult to challenge, difficult to scale and size. So if we need to scale up or even scale down, which one of these components do we scale first? Do we add more proxies? Do we add less proxies? Do we scale them up? Do we scale them out? Do we need more backup managers? Do we need more mount servers? You could see how suddenly we've got 15 different moving parts and we can move those in, out, up and down, or more of them. But which one solves our problem? We're probably gonna have to engage PS or something like that to get an answer. Not with HYCU. you know, we're going to have different UIs, different ways of reporting, different ways of managing. We've got three different managers just on this screen alone for reporting, centralized management and local management. So just to protect and report on one VM, we're potentially going to have to log into 2 or 3 different places. And unfortunately, all these things increase cyber risks and bring in performance issues. Every one of these components increases your attack surface. Every agent we saw with the CrowdStrike, okay, that wasn't a ransomware attack. It was a dodgy bit of code pushed out. They dealt with it very well, in my opinion, and they dealt with it, fixed it, and held their hands up. But imagine if that was a bad actor managed to get into those agents. Imagine the attack surface of every single VM having something installed on it rather than not having anything installed. Suddenly, that becomes a much, much, much bigger attack surface than just one VM. So let's look at the modern way. Let's look at the HYCU way. So essentially, we can take all of those agents away. As I mentioned before, we don't have any agents at HYCU. We can take all of those components and basically put them all into a single box. We give all of those resources back to you, and all we ask is that we take one virtual machine away from you. So everything is packaged into a single secure virtual appliance, purpose-built for Nutanix, and all the things you need to do for data protection can be done through that single virtual appliance. That is data protection the modern way. That gives us a lower TCO. We consume less VMs, less resources, definitely less time, and definitely less people. We're faster to deploy. A single virtual appliance deployed in less than 10 minutes. We can discover those virtual machines automatically. We can protect them with policies. We recover and manage faster as well. Completely lightweight. I've mentioned this many times, but it's really, really a key or core principle to HYCU is there's no agents, there's no proxies. There is definitely no impact to protection because we hook into the APIs that Nutanix want us to. We give instant protection and a limited scale. We're easy to scale, easy to size. We've got one thing to size, one thing to scale. Very, very simple to do. You scale it up. If you want to add more of them to add to give yourself more redundancy, whatever else you could do, you can add more of the same component, but there's still only ever one component and it's identical every single time. So that's HYCU's efficiency. And now I'm going to move on and bring Nick in for data domain efficiency because I know they've got a huge story about efficiency. around storage efficiency. So Nick, I'm going to move the slide on, and I'm going to hand it straight to you because you're going to be able to tell the story far better than I can.
Yeah, talking about efficiency, I mean, you touch upon your your points, right? On less VMs, less. I mean, this is where we talk about less storage requirements, right? So data domain, I think one of the unique selling points of data domain is the deduplication part of the system. It can do, yeah, I think best in the market. I can say that. I mean, there are a lot of customers using it for one, the security, but also for its storage efficiency. So we can store up to that. It says 65-1 deduplication rate. Of course, that's also how much does your data change? How much do you store? Deduplication can vary, of course, but I think we have seen customers with HYCU and data domain that are reaching, I think, between 20 and 30-1 already. Like I said, it's really depending on the schedule of your schedules within HYCU, right? So, but overall, less network traffic, and that is definitely the DD Boost integration that HYCU has done with the data domain. So HYCU has integrated our APIs into the product. So when you install HYCU, you get the features and functions to use data domain's efficiency, right? So less impact to the backup clients. Yeah, and overall, it's just a lower TCO when using data domain. So that's what I wanted to add to this slide. Yeah.
Amazing, yeah. And I was with a customer relatively recently in the UK, and one thing we were comparing, other vendors and other solutions to HYCU and data domain. And one of the biggest things that came out of that was actually this is obviously massively important, the amount of data they can store, but actually the footprint it can store it in was much, much, much smaller because of these reasons, right? So, we could store the same amount of data that a competitor could in one rack in like 6U or something stupid like that. So it
Yeah.
means that, there's less rack space, less power, less cooling. We know electricity and all that things are going through the roof, especially in Europe. It's expensive to cool and store. And then also from a networking perspective, right? I think it was something like 14 times less network connectivity. So we needed less switches, less firewalls, less inter-rack connectivity. All those things add to your TCO, right? And then also the rack space alone costs money. Okay, if you're a huge, enterprise, you might own your own data center, so rack space isn't a problem. But if you're renting from Equinix or any other data center provider out there, they charge you either per rack or per U or whatever it might be. So if we can minimize the rack space, that again also bundles into your TCO. So it's TCO value from the HYCU side, from using less production resources, using less storage, so we can store more for less. And then also from our actual physical footprint, we not paying out on cooling, power, rack space, networking, cabling, all those things. So it's overall that massive TCO package comes together. It's a really, really valuable story for customers. So let's move on to the next thing. So security. Security is a big thing. I pretty much can't go into any conversation about backups without talking about ransomware and cyber resilience and all these things, because it's the number one threat for most organizations. It's the number one thing that CISOs and CTOs are scared of is cyber, right? They are still scared of it. We don't really still have a great answer for it. We're getting better, but still we see impacts of in recently in the UK. I'm not sure if it came across the world, but a global brand like Marks and Spencer's, very well regarded in the UK, got hit. Their online shopping was down for I think 2 or 3 weeks. So they couldn't take online orders for 2 or 3 weeks, which is in today's marketplace is probably going to be like 50-60% of their business is online marketplace, I'm guessing. So security is a very, very hot topic. So here at HYCU and Dell, we take security incredibly seriously. So security is built from the ground up. So we here at HYCU, we have military grade security. And why I say military grade is that we're the only data protection vendor to have a DISA STIG. So if you don't know, if you're in Europe, I had to learn this a little bit, but DISA is the Defense Information Systems Agency in the USA. Very well regarded. They essentially certify IT and software systems to say, yes, they can run at military grade. You can install that on this warship at this battle site or whatever it is, because it's so secure that we believe in it, right? That's essentially what HYCU has, the ability to go into these sites where no one else can go and say, we can protect your data because we are so secure. FIPS 140-2 certified. We've recently got our SOC certification as well. NIAP common criteria. And as I said, we're heavily used across the federal use cases in Australia, in the USA and various other militaries and governments around the world as well. So we kind of take security incredibly seriously because a lot of our customers take it incredibly seriously as well. If the Navy in the USA can use the software and it's secure enough for them, you can pretty much guarantee anywhere else in the world it's going to be acceptable levels of security. We give you security out of the box as well. This isn't something we say, here's a 35-page Word document on how to secure HYCU. This comes pre-hardened. So when you download it, it comes pre-hardened from us. We have multiple validated blueprints and designs with Nutanix, so you know how it's supposed to work and how it's supposed to integrate. And we have less vulnerabilities than most other vendors in the marketplace. We don't use agents. We don't use Windows. We're 100% Linux-based in a custom Linux environment, pre-hardened, pre-patched, and we do all the security for you. If there's a patch needs to go out, we give you a new appliance. You don't have to go and patch it yourself. And defense in depth, we secure data with immutability. We find threats with ransomware detection. So we have anomaly detection and active malware scanning as well. You always keep control over your data. So this is one of the biggest pieces of HYCU is data control, data sovereignty. And this message really hits home in Europe, right? When we start looking, I mean, look at the UK, right? We made a bad decision, or in my opinion, a bad decision quite a few years ago now and left the EU. Suddenly that data boundary went from we can store data in the whole of Europe, we trust the whole of Europe. Suddenly that data boundary got, okay, it's just UK. And now suddenly organizations are going, okay, how do I scramble and make sure my data is in my control at all times in a boundary, in the sovereignty that I need it? That becomes incredibly important because when you start looking at other competitors out there, they do send data to their own cloud or to their tenancy in their cloud stored in the US or stored in Europe or stored outside of Germany, for instance, for our German customers. Those things are sometimes now not acceptable. So you always keep control. And the great thing about Dell and HYCU together is you place your data domain wherever you want to put it, right? You can put it in your local data center, you can put it in your remote data center, you can put it in your tenancy in the cloud. It's not going somewhere else. And then again, we always have security with compliance and reporting and posture management as well. So if you're storing data inside, let's say, an S3 bucket, if that S3 bucket, for instance, has public access, we're going to tell you it's got public access inside the software. Or if you configured it without public access and then it changes to have public access, again, we're going to immediately notify you to say, your S3 bucket where your backups are stored, by the way, that now has public access. So potentially that's like an indicator of compromise, right? So that's from a HYCU point of view. So let's just switch over to data domain. So I know that data domain has so many security features. So Nick, do you want to run us through some of the key points on the slide? We have got time to go through them. So I want to really get across how secure and how unique this is in the marketplace. So take it away.
Yeah, I talked about a unique selling point being deduplication as one of them, right? So what you see here also are the security features, and definitely some of them make the data domain unique. Let me just start from I'll just pick a few, Chris. Data immutability, for example, I touched upon it really quick, but with data immutability, it's called retention lock. We can have two variants of that. We can have a compliance mode, we can have a governance mode. What does that mean? I mean, in short, when you have governance mode, you still have some controls. The backup admin does have some controls to change, to change some things on the data domain, which change the immutability. Compliance, however, is a more hardened feature. When you put compliance mode on there, you write your backups to a data domain. You cannot change it for the period that you have set this lock. No matter what, you need to go to the data center. You need to pull drives. That's period. So that's I would recommend when using this hardware lock, because it is a hardware lock, right? To use a compliance lock method for most customers, so that you at least have a certain amount of time that your backups have not been tampered with, right? So that's immutability. End-to-end encryption, I think I can explain that really quick. I mean, DD Boost is part of the integration with HYCU. It sends the data encrypted across the wire by default, which is good. You can enable encryption at rest on the data domain, right? It can be set on the data domain level. You don't have to do anything on the application layer. It's purely done from a data domain, so it sits encrypted at rest. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to highlight here, I'll go a little bit to the bottom, is the file system with data and vulnerability architecture. And if there are any other questions around the other ones, I'm happy to answer them, by the way. But looking at the time, I think we should cover those. Data and vulnerability architecture. I think that's also one of the unique points with data domain. It really means backups being sent to the data domain are being checked constantly. So what you put onto the data domain, you are absolutely sure to retrieve it the same way as you have put it on there. So
Yeah,
that's part of file system. It's part of the architecture. You cannot turn it off, turn it on. It's part of the file system. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that kind of is kind of summarized on this slide, right? So this is kind of
Yeah, that's
the data
exactly.
durability, right? So
Exactly.
if you want to go through it in detail, Nick, you feel free. We've got some time. But if not, we can just skip over. I think people have maybe got the idea of what we do. So let's just skip across and go to the data domain portfolio. Run us through what you can buy. What's the
Yeah.
what's the different use cases for each one, right?
Yeah, well, depending on of course the capacity requirement of performance requirement. You would choose a model. Um, so this is where I come in, right, in a pre-sales phase to size a workload. So let's say you are an Nutanix customer and I want to use data domain. I have this amount of data and I have this retention period and I would like to use that. So this is where I come in, size the environment, and then we can have a talk. And yeah, we would choose a model that would most fitly fit the environment. So what you see here is like the four models. There are more models. These are somewhat older models, but these are, let's say, the newer, let's say the latest models. The most loved ones, the all-flash ready node and the DD6410. The all-flash ready node is a PowerEdge server with flash and actually a data domain virtual edition sitting on top of that. We will be launching a full flash data domain model somewhere in August, if I'm correct. So that's a data domain with flash, not a virtual edition. It's a full system, but that's future. DD6410 is the successor of the DD6400. These are all based HDD based models together with the 9410 and the 9910. But again, it comes down to capacity in most cases and performance as well. And maybe to touch upon the data domain virtual edition. So we see at the bottom the data domain virtual edition sitting mostly in the cloud to receive backups from SaaS applications, right? We will touch upon that later, Chris. But
Absolutely.
that instance can scale from, let's say, 1 terabyte to 256 terabytes. So if you exceed that, you just deploy a new virtual edition, and then you scale like that. So
Amazing.
yeah,
So I think we've covered the all flash ready node.
yeah,
Obviously going to be quicker, less rack
exactly.
space, all those types of things, less power because it's not got spinning disks. That's kind of the massive advantages there. But let's look at the HYCU and Dell advantages and values to our customers, right? So the first one is instant ROI. So we've got an instant protection with zero learning curve, right? HYCU's UI is designed to look like Nutanix. So when you're in Nutanix and you switch to HYCU, it looks exactly the same, feels the same. The workflows are designed to be the same. So we don't have that really horrible 5-day training course you have to go on to learn another piece of software. It looks and feels exactly like Nutanix. We're going to give you a low cost of ownership, right? No agents, no proxies required for backup or DR. The storage efficiencies we've mentioned already from data domain, the less power, the less cooling, less networking, all of those things come into play when we have a lower cost of ownership. We're going to minimize disruptions. We have the fastest possible recovery. In Nutanix, we actually use instant recover, which is actually the fastest way to recover data inside a Nutanix environment using HYCU. Simplify that compliance story, right? Most organizations or most people that come in and do compliance and checks and auditors and those sorts of things are using a data domain. Cool. They kind of know how secure a data domain is. It's been in the industry a long time. They understand the benefits of it and all those types of things as well. Achieve resilience. Absolutely. Hardened, secured, and battle tested. This has been around for a long time, right? The HYCU and the data domain. They've both been in the markets for a long time. Both have amazing customer reviews, very, very good customers that will keep renewing, keep going to battle for them because they know how good the solution is. We're going to help you reduce risk. your freedom of choice to move those workloads anywhere at any time, right? We're going to come on to this in a little bit more detail in a couple of slides time, but we're talking about Nutanix today, and obviously we spoke really early on about the kind of the changing hypervisor landscape that's happened over the last few years. Um, that's not uncommon, right? Things happen in the marketplace which have seismic shifts into what people do with their data. We don't want to be locked into our data, so we obviously we're incredibly close to Nutanix, and we'll continue to support Nutanix forever. But we also support VMware. We also support Azure Local. We also support Hyper-V. We also support Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, multitude of other SaaS and modern applications as well. So it's not just about for Nutanix only. It's about that whole modern data estate and being able to move workloads where you need them. Unlock that efficiency, saving time and resources to deployment and management. And then peace of mind, giving you that peace of mind that you are in an environment that is super secure, super regulated, and super easy to work with. So I want to come across now to the HYCU Dell promise. So I love this slide because it's, this is what we're going to give to you. So if you take one slide away from this, I think this is the one slide, right? Your backup operation will take significantly less time. You will free up critical resources, and that's not just about compute, memory, CPU, storage, networking. That's people, processes, time as well. All those critical resources, you will free up all of those across the board. You will recover faster. And you can count on HYCU and Dell to stay aligned to Nutanix's roadmap. And you can protect all critical apps on Nutanix, not just your virtual machines. And all of this with an industry best net promoter score of 91. So we've discussed Nutanix at length now. So now let's ask the question, what percentage of your data estate is Nutanix? That might be 90%. It might be 95%. It might be 50%, right? But pretty much everyone in the world has got a hybrid cloud strategy now. It is pretty much the de facto strategy for every single organization in the world, whether you're, enterprise, FTSE 100 or, whatever you are, or an SMB business. You're going to have some form of hybrid cloud. You might have a hypervisor. You might have more than one hypervisor. You're probably going to have some IaaS in there. You're potentially looking at some workloads like AWS Lambda or S3 or RDS or something like Google Cloud, SQL, something like that. So they're kind of more modern workloads, modular workloads. And then you're going to also have SaaS applications. Pretty much every single customer I go into pretty much has Microsoft 365. It's pretty much the ephemeral SaaS application. A lot of them have got Salesforce. A lot of them have got Confluence or Jira. They've got Entra ID or Okta for identity management. They've got Redis databases, Pinecone for the AI data, right? You can see all the various ones on the screen here, and that's just a small subset of what we support. So here at HYCU and Dell, you can see the vast range of workloads that we do support. All of this data can be landed on a data domain in one flavor or another, whether that's a physical data domain box or a data domain virtual edition in the cloud that Nick has already spoken about. So for instance, let's take Microsoft 365 as an example of a SaaS app that everyone knows what it is, everyone knows what it does, right? Typically, most backup vendors when they do 365 now are backing up in pretty much one or two ways, right? You provide cloud storage from yourself and they back it up to some cloud storage, so S3 or Azure Blob, or they bring it into their own tenancy, right? So they bring it into a backup owned S3 tenancy and do it their way. There's some others on the marketplace that do they back it up to their own on-premise storage and stuff like that. But what that does, it gives you a bit of a headache because obviously it's expensive to store all that data. But also if you give up control, you're giving up that sovereignty and control of your data in backup land. What we've done is an industry first, so no other backup vendor supports this. Being able to take all that efficiency, all that security, all of the stuff that we've talked about, all those benefits around data domain, and then HYCU, and take applications like Microsoft 365, place them inside a data domain in your tenancy, in your control. Get all that efficiency of deduping that data down, getting all that security of what Nick's mentioned around the immutability and the durability and all those types of things for all these SaaS workloads. So yeah, I mentioned 365, but Entra ID, Okta, Box.com, all these different things where potentially large data sets are stored, we can then get a massive storage efficiency in your control with immutability, all these pieces. And again, industry first for all of these workloads. No other vendor can do that onto a data domain application. This becomes incredibly important as you look across your data estate and say, yeah, we've got our hypervisor covered, right? Most organizations have probably got their hypervisor backup strategy in place. Like It might not be optimal, it might not be purpose built for that platform like we've discussed beforehand, but they might have something in place. But when we start looking at SaaS and cloud, it becomes a very, very different story. Most of the conversations I have in the field, and Nick, I don't know if you want to comment on this after I finish, but most of the conversation I'm having in the field around backup of this is not how are you backing up, it's why do you need to back it up? Because people still understanding that these SaaS vendors are backing up your data for you. These cloud vendors are backing up your data for you, right? This shared responsibility model isn't known about because we've come from this on-prem world and everyone thinks, oh, well, put it in the cloud. It's not my problem anymore. Guess what? Your data, your responsibility. I don't know if that resonates with what you're seeing. A lot of it, from my point of view, is education, saying, oh, yeah, I think 365 of people have got the idea they need to do that now because everyone does it. But when they start looking at Entra ID, Okta, Box, Salesforce, all these types of other places, GitLab, GitHub, they start thinking, oh, yeah, I didn't think about all of those places.
I think what I wanted to say on this, Chris, is you're looking at this from a HYCU perspective, right? But I can see I have the visibility across multiple backup vendors, and I can tell you that this is quite unique. The vast amount of SaaS applications that can be protected by HYCU is unique, and especially protecting them to data domain. I can't think of any other vendor that can do that. So I think that's quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of this from a single vendor, right? So from HYCU, you can back up your Nutanix. You can then have you can have all three public cloud providers in a single console. So you can back up Google Cloud, Azure, AWS from a single console. You can then from the same consoles back up 365, DocuSign, GitLab, GitHub, Salesforce, Confluence, Okta, Entra, all these places from that single interface, single place, all being backed up to a single common architecture on a data domain. I don't think it gets any simpler than that. All your data backed up in one place, going to one place, with which has the best in class security, best in class storage efficiency. I really think the story is very simple to understand. From my point of view, it's marketing dream. I can come out and say all your data stored in one place on one place. I think it's a really, really cool story. So if you wanted to get started, there's a QR code on the screen here, which gives you a HYCU free trial. If you go onto HYCU.com as well, you'll see loads and loads of HYCU and Dell joint solution briefs, data sheets, all those things. There's one for 365. There's product tours on our website available for our SaaS application, so you can see how easy it is to protect, Okta or Box.com, wherever else it might be. So you can go and do a product tour and click through and those types of things. What we'll do is I'll leave that on the screen rather than showing a question slide. And we do have some questions. So let's go through a few of the questions. So, right, let's look. I'll read them out and then I'll just figure out who they're for. So, while the architecture is based on Dell data domain with HYCU, how does this work for a customer who doesn't use data domain? So HYCU has some built-in compression and dedupe capabilities, but nowhere near the levels of data domain. A lot of customers, if they're after that, I would always say, yeah, we can do that, but I would consider even a DDVE in the cloud and see how that can change your TCO massively. Because even just sending it to an S3 bucket or something like that, and a data domain in the cloud is using the same underlying storage as an S3 bucket, but you're getting all that security, all that efficiency built on top. So I know you guys at the pre-sale stage have like calculators to help you calculate, how much more efficient, how much cheaper, and that type of thing it to be. But yeah, so HYCU has some in the software, but nowhere near the levels of data domain. Hence why this is a great collaboration.
One of the biggest reasons is fixed block comparing to variable block length deduplication. So the data domain is able to see the variable blocks, which of course makes sense to have a better deduplication. So that's mostly the difference in why data domain does a better job.
Perfect. And then someone else asked, they've questioned the single VM. So yes, single VM. So we tell you how to protect HYCU from a HA point of view. But essentially everything we do is stored in the backup data. So you could just deploy a brand new HYCU VM, read the data in, and you'll be back up and running. So we don't particularly need HA. It's incredibly secure. SSH is disabled, all that type of stuff. So the idea of it going down is relatively rare. If it does, you can just redeploy a brand new one on top. And then scale, even if it's on different hosts, underlying hosts underneath Nutanix, we interact with Nutanix storage directly. So we don't need proxies and things on the actual hosts that are running. So we're not accessing the data from there. We're doing it using the APIs, so we have more efficiency that way. Application aware backups, yes, absolutely supported. So we integrate with Nutanix Guest Tools or NGT, and they have application consistency in their ways. So again, we don't add anything else into the VM. We utilize things that are already there and required for Nutanix things to work. So we have application consistency, absolutely. Even for physical machines. So if you have some physical machines, we still don't deploy agents. We do everything in runtime. So everything gets deployed in runtime, gets backed up, and then deleted off the machine. So it's not something that's permanently sat there as an attack surface to be done. What level of impact levels is certified to? So I'm not sure how disastig relates to IL2, IL3, etc. But I know that we don't have any problems with any level of classification of data. HYCU is installed in, it's in places that that you wouldn't imagine it's installed. So things like, aircraft carriers and warships and those things like that. So, incredibly secure data is backed up and protected by HYCU. So I wouldn't have any problems saying that we could install pretty much in any place that you need it to. And someone asked about the vulnerabilities. So yeah, 100% Linux based. So I don't have any tangible data as the number of CVEs, but if you were to Google, CVEs in Veeam and Rubrik and things, you will find them relatively. There was one in the news that came out not that long ago. I think it was a 9.9 or something. It was maybe a month or two ago. So you'll find them. They're there. And that's not to say that Veeam is inherently insecure. I'm not saying that at all. I don't like to bash other vendors at all. What I'm saying is that they do have CVEs and they do publish them, but they do patch them quickly. But it's down to the end users to take that action and patch quickly. And if they don't do that, then it does open up vulnerability in there as well. So if anyone does have any other questions, that's all the ones that we have. One more, sorry, for you, Nick. So we've heard a lot from HYCU and Data Domain. What would you say is the three biggest reasons why people choose Data Domain over other vendors for backup storage?
Yeah, good question, Chris. I highlighted them, of course, but I think it's good to mention them again. I think the storage reduction, the deduplication part of data domain is a huge driver. The security piece, so think about the immutability, data invulnerability architecture, and actually the DD-Boost integration. So the DD-Boost integration, which makes the transfer from the appliance or from the application all the way to the data domain secure. I think those are the most important topics when talking about data domain.
Amazing. So amazing. So I'm just going to give anyone 30 more seconds to put any more questions in the chat. So if you do have any last questions, please pop them in the chat. I don't have the ability to unmute people, unfortunately, to bring you into the conversation directly. So please, if you do have them, put them into the chat for us. That would be very helpful. I can see someone's raised their hand. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to unmute you. So if you could put your question into the chat, that would be very helpful. And if not, then don't worry. I can wait if a question is no longer or has been answered by Nick already, then feel free not to.
Yeah,
So
I think I got unmuted, Chris.
Oh, you got unmuted. Oh, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Someone else did. My magical people in the background. Amazing.
Yes, our support. I did.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi there.
I think all of my questions have been answered. So I put most of the questions what you already discussed. So it's great. Just one final thing maybe that I have, given what's there on the screen, is it possible for us to look at this free trial in a way that we are able to offer this to customers who are currently using, let's say, for example, an Azure native backup or some other backup that they're currently using, and then combine with what we could possibly achieve using HYCU and Dell DDVE in the cloud or on-prem in that hybrid setup to see what the actual TCOs will be and then make an informed decision. Is that something that you support, or do you have that sort of an offering?
Yeah, so we've got free trials for all of our products. So this is the QR code that take you to the Nutanix page. But if you go to HYCU.com, you'll find free trials for our other offerings, so like Azure Native and AWS and GCP and all the SaaS workloads as well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're trying to do things like TCO and pairing it with particular storage and trying to compare against other things, I would engage your Dell and HYCU team because they're going to be far better in understanding requirements and calculating, efficiencies and storage sizes and just have a far greater level of detail than you might have on your own exploring a new solution. So I would say, yeah, reach out to your local team. If you have a Dell rep, reach out to your Dell rep, and they'll be able to get you in contact with the team, or inquire through the website, and we'll get you hooked up through the HYCU and through that way. So either way, so yes, we can trial anything. You can POC pretty much anything for you and customers, no problem. When you're looking at TCOs and those more complicated conversations, definitely involve your team, because they'll be able to help you out massively.
Okay, sure. I'll reach out to the Dell rep. Thank you.
Perfect. Amazing. So one last question we do have. So is HYCU a cost beneficial alternative for relatively small systems? So Dell XC4000, don't know what that is, but slash Nutanix plus local NAS compared to Veeam. So I would say absolutely. Yes, so HYCU is comparable to Veeam, if not sometimes cheaper, depending on what we're licensing. So we have variable different ways of licensing. So we can do it via core, via VM, for capacity for objects and files. So we can kind of make the licensing more efficient for customers if we need to. And then the efficiency you're going to get from a data domain, even if it's their smallest data domain or a virtual edition in the cloud, right? You don't have to have the all flash ready node. You don't have to have 4 petabytes of data to kind of benefit from DD. Even if you've got a relatively small local NAS or something like that, you can still benefit from the security and the efficiency that data domain is going to bring you. So I would say absolutely yes. And again, if you are interested in that kind of TCO, how it would compare, get in front of your Dell reps, get in front of the DPS team at Dell or HYCU, and we can certainly run you through all those cost calculations and how we compare, and not just the license and storage costs, but also things like how much data we can save, how much time we can save, and all those types of things, how much more secure we can be as well. So absolutely. Perfect. I think that's all we have, and I think we're pretty much at time anyway. So perfect. XC4000 is a small form factor HCI system. Amazing. I learn something new every day from everybody. So thank you everyone for your time, patience, and attention. So my name is Chris Rogers, and Nick, thank you for joining me. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to your Dell teams, your HYCU teams, or your partner community as well. We all, you'll probably be able to get through to us through any of the partners that you work with as well. More resources available at HYCU.com and Dell.com as well. But thank you very much, Nick, and we'll see everyone on the next one.
Thank you.